All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching. If you're watching live or if you're replaying this, I greatly appreciate it. I am going to publish this on Patreon now so people know that I am going live. So thanks to everyone that supports me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. I've been able to really focus more on activism and just do so many more things because of my Patreon support. So it never goes unnoticed. And I try to support others on Patreon. Um, since I receive, support on Patreon, I make sure that the people that I also support are in line with just my values and the values of the people that support me. So thanks so much for watching once again. So this is episode 3, I guess, of the Sesh podcast or podcast live stream. And the last time I think I did it live on Instagram and live on, it was like a dual live, but this time it's just completely going to be just live on YouTube for Patreon. For Patreon. And every month I try to figure out a topic that I think is interesting, and maybe I'll start taking polls about what you all would like for me to talk about. But I think this episode's topic is pretty interesting, and that's things vegans say that are incorrect. So I've been doing outreach and activism for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in 4 days? I always remember the day that I became an activist. It was November 3rd because that was when I was with Anonymous for the Voiceless. That was they have an International Cube Day where chapters all around cube on the same day. And it was the first time that our Atlanta chapter had participated and done a cube. So I'll always remember that as the first time that I did any form of animal rights activism. So so I've been doing this for about 3 years, and I've had a lot of conversations. Had a lot of conversations online, in person, and just have come across just some things that I've said in the past that vegans typically say, or just things that are often said in the animal rights or vegan community that aren't 100% correct. And by no means is this to, attack any activists or to speak ill or negatively of any activist. It's just correcting people and just correcting language and addressing certain language. So I've been talking for about 3 minutes, so I think that's enough time for people to come on over from Patreon if they are interested in watching. And thanks to the person that is watching live. I never know if that's an error when it says someone is watching live, but if there is someone watching live, thank you so much. So I guess I'll start now. And I guess right before I start, I'll say that the reason I started doing these is because I was kind of doing these as a monthly wrap up and I was telling all the Patreon supporters all the things that I did throughout the month. But now, since I do that once a month at the beginning of the month, I just post out I create a post on Patreon where it shows all the activism that I've done every month. So now I don't have to kind of use this as a way to keep you all informed as to what I'm doing. So I just use that instead. I call that my activism transparency. So you get to see all the actions that I participated in over the last month, and how the support that I get from Patreon allows me to do all of these different types of actions. So all right, so I guess the first thing I'll discuss is the misconception that by being vegan and giving money to more plant-based options, that we are saving more animals' lives. So that is partially correct. So obviously, anytime that you don't support one product, and you support another product, then it defunds the product that isn't getting your money. Obviously, that means that money is being transitioned. If you were spending money on that prior product and now you're buying a new product, that means your money is going elsewhere. So you're voting with your dollars in a sense. So a lot of people say this when they're doing outreach and when they're advocating that, the way that we are going to, defeat animal agriculture is by supply and demand. And well, like I said, that's partially true, but unfortunately, essentially all around the world, definitely in the West, and for the most part in the East also, these industries that exploit animals and kill animals, they receive such large subsidies from the government that the supply and demand isn't as impactful as we think. So I don't want to minimize the fact that when you do buy vegan options, you are supporting vegan companies and you're helping them flourish, or vegan products, I should say, because not all companies that make vegan products are vegan. But these, like I said, these companies and industries that receive government subsidies, they receive such massive subsidies from the government. They receive so much federal funding that they really, when we divert our money from the products that aren't that are animal based and give them to plant-based options instead, it's not as massive as we think. And that's why a lot of the future advocacy work is to be more involved with policy and getting lobbyists involved with, defunding the amount of money that animal agriculture receives, because that's when we'll start to really see that massive change. And obviously, if you are vegan, continue to obviously not support animal products. But I think we just need to be aware that the supply and demand factor doesn't play as big of a role as we may think. So that's just one thing that vegans often say that sometimes isn't, like I said, isn't 100% accurate. It's not a lie or anything. It's just it doesn't really show the full scale of everything. Okay, so the second thing, and I think I just have 5 things, so this won't be a super long list with a bunch of things that I'll be discussing, because I do want to keep these podcasts and live streams relatively short right now, at least while I'm just talking to you all. I just want to keep them, nice, bite-sized, and informative. So the next thing I'll talk about is the fact that often vegans say, if we continue to consume sea animals at the rate that we are, the oceans will be depleted of animals by the year 2050. So that's the approximate year. 2048, I think, is the exact year that's been given, but 2050 is the kind of rounded up year. And so once again, this is partially correct. So it's not that, well, the oceans won't be depleted of sea life because of the way we are overfishing. What's happening is the sea animals that we consume, those are the animals that are most likely to be extinct by the year 2050 if we continue to consume these animals at this rate. So it's not that all sea life will be depleted. It's just the animals, the fish, the animals like crabs and lobsters, shrimp, those types of animals in the sea will be on the sadly may be on the verge of extinction if we continue this. So I often hear vegans say that it's all of the ocean's animals and all of sea life. So it's not all sea life, it's just the animals that we as humans tend to consume. So the next thing I'll discuss is when people say that we aren't omnivores. So this is okay. So I'm not a person that can really 1000% break down the human anatomy. I'm not a professional, but technically we are omnivores, but we are just, you have certain omnivores like bears who they can eat, raw animals, they can eat plants on a regular, consistent basis, and it doesn't really impact their body. It doesn't really have any impact on their body. They can essentially eat anything. So humans are more like deer in a sense, where we can digest animals, but it's just not consistent. And I've seen a lot of photos that breaks down the way that our structures of our teeth are, and that we are more closely related to herbivores. And that may be, 100%, that may be correct. But, I would be lying to someone if I told them that humans aren't omnivores, because we can digest animal products, but that's not what's optimal for us. We see a lot of the diseases that we have in our countries are related to a lot of the animal-based foods that we eat. And this is because, like I said, we aren't really made to eat these types of foods on a regular, consistent basis. Our bodies just aren't made for that. Even when we have to, cook the animal products and season them and drain them, omnivores like bears, they just can eat raw animal flesh, and they can eat fruit, and they can eat, like I said, essentially anything. So while our bodies can process meat, it's just not as easily digestible for the other omnivores that exist in nature, like a bear, for instance. So it's not that we aren't herbivores. It's just I personally believe that our bodies are much more in line with a herbivorous, if that's a word, a diet, and not an omnivore diet. Because even when we eat, like I said, the animal products, we have to change them so much to make them digestible to our stomach. So I think us as vegans just need to be aware that if we were to say that we aren't omnivores, even deer, like I said, deer can eat. They eat birds during dry seasons, or if they can't eat other foods. So even though they are herbivores, they have the ability to digest flesh and meat. It's just not ideal for their body. So, are we technically herbivores? It's very possible. Are we technically omnivores? It's very possible. I think it may be more of, and this is just me blabbing at this point, there may be more of a sliding scale where our bodies are 80 to 90% herbivorous and 10% omnivorous, if those are correct words once again. That's kind of how I tend to look at those definitions that define our diet. But if I'm completely wrong, then just feel free to tell me in the comments, message me, let me know, hey, this isn't correct. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. If I ever am giving misinformation, I obviously want to be corrected. And that's why I created this list, because I just found myself, I just realized that in the past I've said things that I don't know if they were 100% correct. And I didn't know until I had more information and knowledge and had more time to think about them. So that's just something that I wanted to bring up. So the next thing that I'll talk about is when vegans say things like, you can't be an environmentalist and not be vegan. So there's a few things that vegans tend to say that are like this. Some vegans say things like, you can't be a feminist and not be vegan, or you can't, or I'll say you can't love animals and not be vegan. And I think there's a lot of nuance in this. So, I mean, everyone here or that is watching knows that I advocate for animals, and I never advocate for someone to consume animals, outside of a life or death, extreme, drastic situation. Um, but when we say things like you can't be an environmentalist and not be vegan, that's not technically correct. I mean, you can be an environmentalist and not be vegan, but you just aren't doing as much as you could to be a better environmentalist. So you're just, the things that you're doing are not as great for the environment as they could be. So I guess it just depends on how effective of an environmentalist do you want to be. I mean, you can be an environmentalist, but are you doing everything that's possible and realistic to be a better environmentalist? Like, I consider myself an environmentalist, but I don't live a zero waste lifestyle. So am I technically an environmentalist? I mean, I would like to believe so, but I mean, there are obviously things that I could still do to be better. So I guess it comes down to, what's possible and practical, once again, as it relates to the definition of veganism. Is it possible and practical for you to not consume animals? If so, then that would be a lot better for the environment. And also, I mean, another thing is that, there are people that live off of the land and they kill all the animals they eat. That's very rare, or I should not even say rare, but that's not something that most people do, especially in the West. But indigenous people on indigenous land, you know, they may be better environmentalists than vegans because the way that they consume their food is better for the environment than a lot of the processed and things that come in plastic packages that vegans eat. So I just think we need to be careful when we use the kind of language when we tell people what they can and can't be, and if it's consistent with if being vegan is consistent with the types of things that other people are trying to aspire to be. So just like if you were to tell someone you can't be feminist and not be a vegan, as far as I understand the feminist movement to be, it is primarily about human women, about human females, not necessarily about females of all species. So, and like I said, once again, if I'm wrong, definitely correct me. But I guess technically, I think the spirit of feminism is, equality for both sexes. And obviously what happens to female animals isn't consistent. It is not something that I think feminists would want to support in theory. So I think we just, like I said, once again, when we say things like you can't be a feminist and not be vegan, we're just using kind of divisive language. And I don't know if that's 100% correct one to do so, but also if we are technically 100% correct when we are saying these things. Also, this one is kind of tricky, and you all can let me know what you all think. So, and not even just about what I'm about to say, but just about any of the things that I've discussed so far. So when, as vegans, we say you can't love animals and eat them. So I don't know if this is, I'll say that I don't think you can say you love all animals and you eat animals, because obviously in the aspect of, in the umbrella of all animals, the ones that you eat, you aren't displaying love for them if you are eating their bodies and causing them harm and violence. Excuse me, when you have the ability not to. So I think sometimes, even with this statement, maybe you can love certain types of animals and not love other ones, and that's very species and that's very discriminatory. But that, I don't know, I guess sometimes some of the things I'm saying maybe are loopholes in language. And I guess that's the point of this, is to not focus necessarily on, I guess, what we're saying, not get caught up in the technicalities of what we're saying, but just to be informed about when we say things, we should think about the bigger goal, about being more effective, but also being accurate and punctual. So yeah, so you can't love animals and eat them. Well, I personally don't feel that you can love all animals and eat them. Now, can you love dogs and cats and eat pigs and cows? I think that's very possible. I think you can. I think, yeah, you can discriminate against one type of animal and love another. I mean, I guess, can you truly love an animal of any species if you contribute to the harm of other animals of different species? That's a very good question. But I just tend to, like I said, I'm bringing these things up just, I guess, to just bring awareness to how powerful language can be and how it can be picked apart. So that was the fourth thing. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, when people say that eating animals is not a personal choice because it involves a victim. Now, I don't know if this is, grammatically 100% correct. And once again, I want you all to let me know if I'm incorrect. But I think what we should focus on is not necessarily telling people that their personal choices aren't personal because they impact others. Or, you know what, because I've said this a lot, I've used this a lot, this is something that's been used a lot, but I don't know, I guess I'm just thinking these are personal choices. What I do now is say, yes, it's a personal choice, but not every personal choice is ethical. Not every personal choice is moral. I can do, because I guess the way I see personal choice is, it's a decision that I made by myself. Now, if that decision impacts others, is it personal? It's still a personal choice, but now it's not a personal matter, I guess. It involves other beings. So once again, I just say, does this personal choice, is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it consistent with your values? Because we do have the ability to make decisions on our own. We don't have to consult with a group or a committee. And that's what I think. If someone doesn't make a personal choice, or maybe I'm just thinking about this too deeply, you all can let me know. But yeah, I wonder if the personal choice is actually the wrong wording for the point we're trying to get across. If we should focus more on, is it moral as opposed to, is it personal? Because like I said, once again, I would think that if I'm not making a personal choice, it's not about if it impacts others, is, did I have to consult with anyone to make this decision? So I can make personal choices that impact others and it's still not, and it still be a personal choice. So those are just 5 things that I guess I wanted to, just address and create dialogue around for those that are watching, for those that are interested in these types of conversations and words, and not words, but how we use language and how we play with language and how impactful it is. So I think that's it. That actually went by pretty fast, but I've been talking for about 25 minutes. So I will be doing these live streams and podcasts once a month. I do them on the last Friday of the month at 7 p.m. And I've been pretty consistent, surprisingly. I've done them. This is so although this is the third episode of this live stream podcast, I've done about 6 or 7 of these, so all year. And I think each time it gets easier, each time it gets better. I learn how to post it better on Patreon. And at some point I'm going to start recording these. And yeah, I guess it's one last thing I'll talk about. If anybody is watching, so right now these Patreon live streams are exclusive to Patreon. I'm thinking about making them available to the public 30 days after I record them and share them with you all on Patreon. So if you are fine with that, then let me know. Or if you want, if you prefer for these to just stay exclusive to Patreon, if this is something that you just want to keep in-house, feel free to let me know, because I do want you all's input and insight and feedback about this, because I do this for you all. This is essentially me going live once a month for you all right now. If I share it with the world, I could. If I don't, it's no sweat off my back if I don't. I think sometimes the conversations can be cool to share. Like I just shared the last episode, why aren't there more Black people in the animal rights community? I think that is a conversation that I definitely wanted to share and put my, fingerprint on and share that with a larger audience. But sometimes, or maybe that could be a thing where certain ones I share, but the bulk of them I just keep in-house. But let me know what you all think. But that's it for me. Once again, thank you all so much for all the support. I'm working on some great things for next year that I wouldn't be able to do without your Patreon support. And I think you all are going to really like what I am working on for 2021. I had to kind of put it on the back burner because of COVID for this year. But next year I should be able to do what I'm trying to do, and hopefully you all continue to support me and just keep being the compassionate, loving beings that you are. And I appreciate everything that you do and all the support that you give me. So, all right, that is it. I'm logging off. And once again, good morning, good evening, good night. Thank you so much.